Very good morning, students. Now, this is a very short question, okay? Usually asked as a very important short note, okay? Question is, write a short note on Hesselbach's triangle, and this Hesselbach's triangle is sometimes also called as inguinal triangle, okay? So, you have to write a short note on the inguinal triangle or Hesselbach triangle and just mention something about its applied anatomy, why this triangle is important to know. In introduction, I would like to say that this triangle is located on posterior aspect of the anterior abdominal wall above the medial half of the inguinal ring. Just understand in this diagram, this is the umbilicus here, this is the linea alba or the central tendon for the flat muscles of right and left side of the anterior abdominal wall. So this is the linea alba, this is the pubic symphysis, this is the pubic crest, this is the pubic tubercle, obturator foramina, and this is the conjoint ischiopubic ramus. This is subpubic angle, right? So let us see here the muscle taking origin here right from pubic symphysis upper border to that of the pubic crest here. This muscle going upward and expanding as it is going upward is the rectus abdominis muscle, okay? Now then, from the iliac crest, this is the anterior superior iliac spine, and then this is the pubic tubercle. In between the two extending is this ligament called as the inguinal ligament, okay, which you know is the upturned part of the aponeurosis of the external oblique abdominis muscle. Now in this case, external oblique abdominis muscle is not shown, only the inguinal ligament is shown, okay. Here is the combined internal oblique muscle and transversus abdominis is shown. Or you can still consider it that the internal oblique muscle lower fibers are not shown here, only the transversus abdominis is shown, that because here just above half an inch above the inguinal ligament, okay, this deep inguinal ring is seen here, which otherwise is covered by the lowest fibers of the internal oblique muscle. So it is not being covered here by the internal oblique muscle. So this is the lower border of the transversus abdominis muscle is shown here. And then you can see that here just below that of the inguinal ligament, this is the cross section of the external iliac artery is shown, okay, which will become the femoral artery, okay, just below the deep and below the inguinal ligament, it should be femoral. But just to show that there is the origin of an artery, what is called as the inferior epigastric artery. So this is the inferior epigastric artery going from here and right up to the umbilicus, okay. You can see this is the inferior epigastric artery, which is located just medial to the deep inguinal ring, and this is the fascia transversalis. This dotted line indicate the oblique running inguinal canal, okay, inguinal canal. Now the fibers of the internal oblique and transversus abdominis, they join as they go towards linea alba. The lowest fibers, they turn downwards and fuse with each other of the two muscle, internal oblique and transverse abdominis, and they form what is called as the conjoint tendon, written here, okay. So this is the conjoint tendon. Now then the lowest fibers from deep side, okay. So this is the lacunar ligament, you have to imagine it, just I have drawn, okay, from pecten pubis to the inguinal ligament. This triangular lacunar ligament is also shown here, okay, also shown. So this is the conjoint tendon, rectus abdominis, And in this dotted line going right up to the umbilicus, shown is the obliterated umbilical artery. Okay, this is the obliterated umbilical artery is shown here. So this is an orientation of the area or the anterior abdominal wall as we see it from the posterior aspect. That means you sit inside the peritoneal cavity, I mean, it's not peritoneal, extraperitoneally, and then see these structures, okay, or from the posterior aspect of the abdominal wall, anterior abdominal wall. And this is the area where the Hesselbach triangle or the inguinal triangle is located, okay. So let us see what is the Hesselbach triangle. I was on introduction. And introduction I told you that, okay, this is a triangle located in posterior aspect of the anterior abdominal wall above the medial half of the inguinal ligament. This is the inguinal ligament. So above the medial half of the inguinal ligament, this triangle is located above the, I mean say onto the posterior aspect of the anterior abdominal wall. To understand it, that this triangle is in the posterior wall of the anterior abdomen, okay, anterior abdominal wall on the posterior aspect. So the triangle is present deep to the posterior wall of the inguinal canal. So it is located deep to the posterior wall of the inguinal canal, which was formed in its medial 2/3 by the conjoint tendon, okay, and in its lateral 1/3 by the fascia transversalis, okay. That was the posterior wall of the inguinal canal. So this is the triangle which is still deep to the posterior wall, okay. So we are seeing it from the posterior wall, posterior aspect of the anterior abdominal wall, where we will see the location of this triangle. That should be clear in your mind, okay. Now let us see the boundary of this triangle. Now on the lateral aspect, this is bounded by the inferior epigastric artery, which I said takes origin from external iliac artery, right? So this is that inferior epigastric artery, inferior epigastric artery, which forms the lateral boundary of the triangle, which is going towards the umbilicus, okay. It is going towards the umbilicus. So this is the lateral wall. Let us see the medial wall. And medial wall, medial boundaries, okay. So the medial boundary of the Hesselbach or inguinal triangle is formed by the lateral border of the rectus abdominis muscle. I told you that this is the rectus abdominis muscle, and this is its lateral border. See this? This is. So this lateral border, okay, is forming the medial border of the lateral border of rectus abdominis, which is forming the medial border of Hesselbach triangle, and the lateral border of Hesselbach triangle, I said, is formed by the inferior epigastric artery. So the medial, it is the lateral border of rectus abdominis muscle, okay, rectus. So this is that border. So I am just drawing with the pencil these two borders, a lateral border and a medial border, right? So this is that area bounded by lateral border and medial border of the Hesselbach triangle. Inferior, which is also called, since it is a triangle, this you can call it as a base also, or inferior border or base. And this inferior border or the base is formed by the medial half of the inguinal ligament. See this violet color thing line? This is the inguinal ligament, and this is the medial half of the, because this is the lateral half. So this is the medial half of the inguinal ligament. So medial half of inguinal ligament, which will form the base. So now three border of the triangles are clear. Let us see its apex. The apex of the Hesselbach triangle is here. It is the meeting point of the inferior epigastric artery. See this inferior epigastric artery and the lateral border of the rectus sheath. So where it is meeting with that of the rectus sheath, this is the apex. So this is the apex. So naturally opposite will be the base, which is the medial half of the inguinal ligament. So this is the apex. So apex is the meeting point of lateral border of rectus abdominis muscle, and where the inferior epigastric artery meets here, inferior epigastric artery. So that is the apex, okay? That is the apex. I hope it is clear to you, okay? Now the floor, okay? What is the floor of this Hesselbach triangle? Now the floor, as since we are seeing from the posterior surface of the anterior abdominal wall, so it is conjoined tendon and fascia transversalis. Okay, this is the same as it was the posterior wall of the inguinal canal, but this we are seeing from its posterior aspect. So it is the conjoined tendon and the fascia transversalis that will be forming the floor. Now, what are the parts? Now, this Hesselbach small triangle, okay, is divided into two different parts, and this division is because of the a obliterated umbilical artery. It is due to the obliterated umbilical artery, which is also called as the lateral umbilical ligament. See, I have written here obliterated umbilical artery. See this dotted line from apex, I mean to say from the umbilicus towards, it is going towards the inguinal ligament, okay? So because it takes origin from an obliterated umbilical artery, okay, which is the nothing but the lateral umbilical ligament also. This will divide the triangle into two parts, a medial part which is towards the media linea alba, and a lateral part which is towards the inferior epigastric artery. And if you will extend it, you will see that the medial part, okay, here it is supported by the conjoined tendon. Here it is supported by the, while its lateral part, it is only supported here by the fascia transversalis, which is thin and weak. Conjoined tendon is very strong, okay? It is very. So it is divided into medial and lateral part. Which is divided? It is the Hesselbach or the inguinal triangle, whose boundary we have seen just now is divided into two parts, medial and lateral part, by the passage of the obliterated umbilical artery. The medial part has conjoined tendon, as I said, while lateral part has the fascia transversalis. So the medial part is strong and lateral part is weak, okay, of this Hesselbach triangle. Now, why we learn this Hesselbach triangle and what is its applied importance, okay? Why? So this is the applied anatomy part. Now, through this Hesselbach triangle, whether it is medial part or the lateral part, through this, if any hernia takes place, okay, which passes through the inguinal canal, then this is called as the direct inguinal hernia. What does it mean? Means any hernia taking origin through the Hesselbach triangle is the direct inguinal hernia. That means medial to the inferior epigastric artery, okay. Any hernia taking from the posterior wall of this inguinal canal, pushing the posterior wall of the inguinal canal, then it is the direct inguinal hernia, okay. And then out of these two parts, medial and lateral part, it is usually observed that the most of the direct inguinal hernia, they arise from the lateral part of the Hesselbach triangle, and this is because this lateral part of the Hesselbach triangle, okay, floor is formed by only the fascia transversalis, which is quite weak, it rarely takes place from the medial part of the Hesselbach triangle because there is presence of very strong conjoined tendon. Okay, so these are rare. That means direct inguinal hernia through the medial part is rare. Okay, it is very common through the direct inguinal hernia is common through the lateral part of the Hesselbach triangle, and that is the importance of the Hesselbach triangle. Thus, if any hernia which is taking place through the Hesselbach triangle, its neck of the hernia of the sacc, okay, the neck of the sacc of the hernia will lie always medial to that of the inferior epigastric artery, inferior. So that is a importance of the Hesselbach triangle. This complete a very short note. Okay, sometime it is asked in a short note. Okay, and then you have to write in these different headings. Thank you very much for watching this video.